Hello Titan Dev Team, I have another video for you which covers one of the frequently asked questions that we're seeing on our Discord channel, which is how do I start building assets? It's a great question, so let's go in and cover it. Now the way that I'd start to tackle this is by opening up the main game world and finding an area of inspiration. Where do I want to work? So we can start taking a look. Ooh, that's cool, sorry, slightly distracted. I've just seen this thing. That's awesome. And we go in. Ooh, and there's a hand over here. Sorry. Anyway, never mind. Okay, so we find a region that inspires us. So there's lots and lots of different regions to choose from. We've got a volcanic region over here, a nice sulfur field over there, tropic region here, clifftop, desert, Arctic region, marshland, starter island, bunch of different ones. So have a little fly around and find an area that inspires you. What the dev team have done in Titan is that they have kind of split off into the different regional areas so that they can kind of manage them a bit more effectively. So you'll be able to find a team working on each of these different areas. Now, as you go around, you'll find an area that inspires you. This one, the marshland area, is one that I'm really liking at the moment. It's got this amazing kind of like tree canopy and little buildings inside, and it's got this little mushroom area over here, which is really nice. So before I start adding any content to this, I want to introduce myself to the team. Now, I've already done that quickly, just over here. We want 3 mushrooms, min or no deal. They're already negotiating with me on the assets that they want. So I've got the marshland region over here, and I've gone in and I've said, hey, I'm going to make this asset. Is that okay? I want to make a quick mushroom. Now, this is really important because we want to start communicating and talking with all of the people who are working this region so that we're not duplicating effort and that we're making sure that we're keeping everything nice and communicative. Now, most of the regions have set up their own Miro boards, which we'll be able to find in the channel. Now, this has a bunch of reference for what they're all trying to achieve as a group, and it's a really useful way of kind of collaborating. So you can go on there, you can start adding your own inspiration to it, or start looking at the inspiration that's already there. You can also take a look at the asset tracking list here, where you can go in and say, I'm going to start building this, so that people kind of know what you're working on. So once I've picked my asset, which like I said is going to be a mushroom, then I'm going to go in, and they've already said that I'm now going to have to make 3 mushrooms. So I've already had to step up my game a little bit here. The Titan Discord is already getting a little bit sassy, I see, as we're going in. So I'm going to go in and build a mushroom. So now we've got the chosen asset in mind in our chosen region, and everyone in the team knows what I'm going to be working on. I can go in and I can start building that out. Now, even though they all know what I'm working on already, I want to make sure that they can see that result really quickly. The quicker that I start adding content in, the better. So I'm going to go in and start building out a little bit of a mushroom. So let's just add a little bit of shape to this. Go in, and that will do. They want 3. I'm going to start with 1 and we'll see how I get on. Maybe I'll add another one. Now, I could add more detail to this, but actually this is fine, right, as an absolute base shape. So I can go in and I can add more, and we will. But for now, I just want to get this in. So the next thing I need to do is I need to make sure that my scale is correct. Because at the moment, if I compare this to a 2 by 2 meter cube, this is a very big mushroom, which might be fine for this region. We might have some very large mushrooms in the world, but we don't know that just yet. So I'm going to build it to kind of a more normal mushroom scale. So in order to do that, we can compare this to our default shape. So this is 2 meters. So I can kind of compare that. If we go, let's say 1.8 meters, that's kind of the rough size of a reasonably tall human. And I can scale this down to something that fits a bit better. Alternatively, if you want to, you can actually go into the characters section. So let's open up Lostfang, which is our main player character. And we can open that up and we can press the Make Static Mesh button. I'm going to just put this in here for now, demo player, and mesh ref, and we should prefix, because that's a good habit to get into, static mesh sm, save that out, and now I've got a static mesh version, and I can actually export this out of the editor. So we can go to Asset Actions, Export, and put this to our desktop or wherever we want to. So you can bring that into your DCC tool, like Blender or Max or Maya, and then you've got a really good reference point for your asset. Now I'm going to go and export this out. Let's just pause 1 second. just to make sure I'm in the correct folder structure. And we're going to go to our main directory that we have here, go to environment. I'm going to find my region that I'm currently working in, which is marshland. And because this is going to be a final mesh and it's not a block out, because that would be something that's going to be intended to be replaced by meshes, and my mushroom is going to be an original mesh. We're going to go in sm_mushroom. Now, my setup, I've actually set up a UE static preset, which is pretty useful, which is just going to automatically set all of the assets for me. Generally, I just do selected objects or active collection, depending on how I'm working. And then I'm going to choose mesh. Make sure that we have our face selection. We can, again, kind of pick and choose these. We don't need to worry about armature or bake animation because this is just a regular static asset. So I'm going to export that out. And because I've exported it into the correct region, it's automatically going to come into the right folder structure, and and Unreal will automatically pick up that it's been added. I'm going to untick generate missing collision because it's a mushroom and I don't really feel like it should collide. If we have multiple meshes that this is formed of and we want it to become one single asset, we can tick combine meshes. I'm going to tell it to build nanite because we can have nanite assets in this project. And I do not want it to create any materials or import any textures. So I'm just going to disable those as well. We generally don't need Unreal to automatically import that data in, especially if we don't actually already have those assets being imported in with it. So once I've got that, I can go to my environment, marshland, meshes, and I can find my lovely mushroom asset here. And then my next step is just to bring it in to test it. So I'm not going to keep this actual asset in the scene. So you shouldn't submit the actual dropped asset into the world, but we definitely should bring it in so that we can have a look at it. So here's my asset that I've got here. And let's just quickly play so that we can see it. And that's my asset in the game world. Now, this is actually looking a little bit too small. So our next step before we submit anything is to go back into our tool, and I'm going to just scale this up a bit because I want it to be, it's a cool mushroom. I want it to be a bit more impactful than that. And I'm also going to fix my scale as well. Most of the time you can kind of get away with not doing it, but it's always good practice to reset your scale as you're working. So make sure you do that. And because I've already got that set up, it's going to give me the correct folder structure for it. And then it's automatically going to re-import as well, which is nice. So I've got my asset, I've got my mushroom, I've tested it, I've brought it in. I'm not going to save that, I'm just going to delete it. Now you can see that we've got a little plus sign here, and that's because we're connected to our version control, which hopefully if you followed the version control documentation, you will automatically be set up for. So I can go in here and I can go to submit content. And you can see that I've got my mushroom in here. I want to make sure that I've just got the content that I've added. Now we'll know that this is an asset because it will point to the asset directory rather than an external actors folder. This is my environment, marshland, meshes, SM mushroom. That's the correct one. So I'm going to now put in a nice detailed change list description. So let's say this is marshland and added a placeholder mushroom asset. Now, because I've submitted that content nice and quickly, everyone who is syncing the project, they will see all of the latest changes. So if we go to my Titan main, go to my desktop, and we look through, you can now see that my submit has been added to the directory. And that means that when people get the latest changes, they'll see that mushroom. This is really important because it means that now when people pull the project, they immediately see there's already a mushroom asset. They know that someone's making a mushroom. And the really useful thing about this is that we can see who's done it. If we right click and we go to revision control and look at our history, we can see the person who made it. And that means that if they've made a big mistake, or they've made an asset, or they've made an error, or you want to get in contact with them because you want to collaborate on the mushrooms, then you can reach out to them really easily just by finding that person. So now I have done that base submit, it's time for me to start iterating on that asset. And I'm going to want to iterate really, really in regular detail. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to add that asset in again. I'm just going to go back into my tool that I've got, and we can start adding some detail to this asset so that it looks, you know, actually like a mushroom. So to do this, I'm just going to, let's quickly just pop a bit of detail on here. So we can go in, I'm gonna, let's just double click on that, open this up, scale down, add a little bit more information. There we go, something like that is pretty nice. Always work with low resolution detail to make high resolution detail. It's the best way to work. And let's just cap this off. Collapse, collapse, collapse. There we go. Add in my asset. And what's quite nice about this, they've demanded that I make at least 3. So I can actually go in, I can add some variance to this quite easily now. So there we go. That's looking kind of nice. Maybe a little bit more interesting shape and geometry. And let's also just give it a little bit of deformation as well, just to make it a little bit more distinct and interesting. Right, so let's go in. How's that looking? That's looking all right. Just going to add another subdivision, I think, is needed. And let's go in and add an interior loop and just harden that up a little bit. There we go. Nice little mushroom. Okay, so these kinds of iterations should be very short and very quick. You want to make sure that as everyone's working, they're seeing the most up-to-date version of what you have. So you shouldn't leave your assets or work on them independently for a really long time without updating that submission. People want to be able to see what you're working on and know how you're going. The last thing I want to do with this is just make sure that we put a temporary UV on. It's a really good idea when you're working to UV your assets regularly and often, because again, when you UV this quickly, it will make your life much, much easier when you're going in. So I'm just going to quickly add a couple of UV seams in here. I'm going to get some stretching on here. So let's go in and add that. Anything that's got a hard edge, I generally want to put a seam on. So let's do something like that. Let's see what that makes. That looks okay for now. And like I said, this is very much about just making a temporary UV space that we can go in and we can work on later. So that will do. And again, if you work with low level geometry and a multi-res to add that geometry in, it makes it so much easier to work with as you're going. So let's go in, add that mushroom back in. So we're going to export again. And now we can see our latest mushroom. And you'll have noticed as well, when I actually added and updated that asset, it asked me to check it out, which is a nice way of adding it. So that's looking nice. It's quite in keeping, I think. People are going to be able to go in and kind of duplicate that around, add it in, and there we go. So that's how we start adding our assets in. And we can carry on iterating on it, so we can carry on with our unwrap, improving that. We can go in and add a high resolution version. We can maybe do a bake down if we want to get some nice normal map information if we need, but we can continue to iterate on that asset as we go. And that's a really good place to start. Now, the main thing I want you to also keep is that don't go and start making a ton of different assets without finishing the ones that you're starting on. If you don't finish the asset, it's very likely going to get deleted, and basically all of that work that you put in making these lovely mushrooms is going to amount to nothing. Other people can pick those assets up if you're done with them and you don't want to work on them anymore, but really you should try your absolute hardest to finish what you start before you move on to the next thing. It's a really easy thing to do as an artist as you go. So that's it. I'm now going to have to go away and build 2 more of these things as the Titan dev team have demanded, but hopefully this video is helpful and gets you on your way into starting to build some cool stuff for the project. Good luck, guys.